Hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Melissa, and my internship was kindly hosted by Auckland Eye Limited. So, Auckland Eye is New Zealand's premier private eye care provider, with 5 different clinic locations in Auckland and a world-class specialty surgical facility. If you're anything like me and your awareness of eye health starts and ends with a trip to Specsavers, you may also be surprised at the scope and importance of the eye care services provided by Auckland Eye. The team of over 100 staff include management, patient services, nurses, ophthalmic technicians, optometrists, orthoptists, and 18 ophthalmologists, who are highly specialized eye doctors. Patients are often referred to Auckland Eye by their GP or optometrist when they feel that more specialized care is required. Procedures and treatments range from prescription eye drops all the way through to vision restoring surgeries and everything in between. As you can see, Auckland Eye is an extremely complex organisation which has undergone significant growth while managing to remain a leader in developments in the eye health field. Auckland Eye's data scientist and business analyst and fellow MIT student, Ken Furushima, had become aware of some discrepancies and bottlenecks within the billing processes at the company, which inspired him to create the project that I worked on during my 10-week internship. With the company striving to move towards digitization and optimization of processes and documentation, it was vital that the project was able to capture a deep understanding of the current processes and issues with an analytical and tech-based point of view. Therefore, the initial goals of the project focused on understanding, documentation, and exploration of the billing process. This felt quite intimidating and unstructured for me, especially having gotten used to the precise requirements and timeframes of uni assignments. So I focused my research on establishing methods for attaining the sort of holistic understanding that I needed to get. I immediately gravitated towards the literature on design thinking methodology, as I had heard the term mentioned in the information technology context, and since my previous studies and career were in the design industry, I was curious to find out what this connection was. Design thinking is essentially an approach to innovation, which is divided into 4 to 5 distinct but non-linear development phases. The terminology and definitions vary across resources, but for the purposes of this project, I used 4 stages. 1, empathize, 2, define, 3, ideate, and 4, prototype. I use these 4 stages to explain and demonstrate the work undertaken and the results of the project in the following slides. In design thinking, the first stage is often seen to be the most important stage of the process, and it is also often returned to throughout the entirety of the project. This stage is all about understanding the user and the context on a deep level, which provides invaluable insights and inspiration for generating not only the most innovative solutions, but being able to identify the elements that are most important to the end user. The first part of the project required me to trace the journey of the billing information through departments, paper trails, and databases. I was given the freedom to conduct formal and informal interviews with staff and to observe parts of the billing process in action. This notably included being in the operating theatre during various surgeries, where billing items are recorded by nurses. I took copious notes and asked a lot of questions, and I began to become familiar with the overarching business processes and the work culture. The next step was to use all of the information I gathered to try and form an accurate and detailed definition of the various billing processes I had observed, and with this, to identify where the issues were originating. This first involved summarizing and completing my notes, which often uncovered gaps in my understanding and sent me back to ask more questions. Some of the processes were complex and difficult to summarize, so I researched and created flowchart-style process maps to demonstrate these. This was a really valuable process as it allowed me to connect the sentiments and observations of staff with the journey of the data and see where these did and did not align. I found that an added value of this process was that after putting all of the pieces together, you can then redefine sections of the processes in new ways which allow you to innovate the flow of information. The diagram here is an example of how I was able to identify different pain points within a process, and consequently, I was able to propose suitable solutions and ideas for each of the issues individually. With a clear understanding developed, I was able to confidently begin to brainstorm potential solutions. In design thinking, both the ideate stage and the prototype stage put an emphasis on maintaining curiosity and experimentation. So I jotted down every idea, good or bad, that I had. This is a process that I was familiar with from my design studies, where we are encouraged to come up with wildly implausible ideas, which can often lead to either a better understanding of what won't work or enable you to disregard any preconceived notions that may have been restricting you. At this stage, I also began collaborating with stakeholders and sharing my findings, as well as observing and listening to meetings to develop an understanding of the priorities of the different stakeholders and the varied work styles. The fourth stage, described by the design thinking process, focuses heavily on the creation of rapid lo-fi prototypes. While prototyping was slightly beyond the scope and expectations of the 10-week project, I found that even a rough mock-up of an idea served as a powerful visual aid for explaining my findings and proposals to stakeholders. Towards the end of the project, I also began testing mini sections of my ideas, which allowed me to discover and work through some of the potential barriers early on. For example, I discovered that the configuration of the database authentication meant that I would not be able to use Node.js as a backend structure for one of my ideas. And I was able to test several other options to find the best fit and update the solution proposal. It was only when I sat down to write the journal section about skills that I had applied during the project that I realized that I had actually touched on concepts from every single paper I took during the course of the program. Even subjects that I may have at the time felt were irrelevant to my future career had in fact given me resources to pull from. The most notable influences were the 2 digital health papers I took, which not only offered insight into some of the common trends and goals in digital health innovations, but also gave me a great foundational knowledge of some of the intimidating medical and research terminology that I was exposed to at Auckland Eye. Another paper that provided a lot of influence to my approach was CompSci 705, Human-Computer Interaction. The way that this course emphasized the importance of varied and context-appropriate research methods, both quantitative and qualitative, informed my approach to information gathering. And I also found myself remembering some of the techniques taught to ask questions skillfully to improve the quality of data gathered from user interviews. Other papers were valuable in less direct ways. For example, keeping in mind the importance of information security throughout the entirety of the process, considering how the introduction of new technologies may be challenging for some people's way of working, and even just knowing how to find good sources of information. Something that was a big challenge for me was adapting to the different pace and shifting my view of my own productivity. The project wasn't something that could be neatly packaged and presented within a 15-minute slideshow. But I can now see how important it is to understand a problem fully before you start to try and solve it. I was able to provide a fresh point of view to questions and issues that may have become routine to experienced staff members. And I think that my presence and endless questions had a positive impact on the way that people viewed their own work. The next steps in the design thinking framework are further prototyping, testing, and eventually implementation. But as you can see in the diagram here, it is far from being a linear process. While there were times when I felt frustrated with the lack of tangible results in the project, the design thinking structure kept me on track, and the enthusiastic support of my mentors and the stakeholders at Auckland Eye allowed me to maintain my momentum and curiosity. Something that I think made a huge impact on the results of the project was not actually anything to do with the work I did, and that was making the effort to connect with the company and the people who form it. I was really lucky to be in a company which already had a great culture, and I made the most of it by attending social events and getting involved in activities such as the pictured poi making workshop during Māori Language Week and joining the recently formed Auckland Eye choir. However, most of the connections I made came from things like sitting with some people I didn't know in the lunchroom and introducing myself, or even just asking someone about their coffee preferences while you wait for them to finish with the machine. In turn, I found friendly faces in departments throughout the company when I needed to interview someone or arrange a meeting. I was also able to gain informal insights into pain points and process issues through casual conversations. On top of this, it just makes the workday so much more enjoyable, and I've met so many interesting people with different backgrounds. The work that I accomplished during the 10 weeks provided the foundations and insight to launch multiple other projects across different teams, and I'm very fortunate to have been asked to continue to analyse and implement innovations at Auckland Eye for a further 6 months. I am excited to continue to utilise the skills I have learnt during the Master's program, and it has been a great experience to see the real-life impact that information technology can have in such an interesting and important field. I would like to extend my gratitude to my industry mentor, Ken, who couldn't be here today, and the whole welcoming and talented team at Auckland Eye. I would also like to thank my academic supervisor, Andrew, and Deb for connecting me with this opportunity, and the staff of the entire ICT grad school for getting us all here. Thank you for listening, and I welcome any questions.